in Canada. Let's talk about domestic stuff going on. The job numbers were released, and invasion is related because a lot of the jobs that would normally go to university kids to fund their education or something to that effect has gone to foreign students. And a lot of people have noticed that, and a lot of the students have noticed that and are complaining now. And so there's news around that and news around the invasion as well. It's all bad. Like, it's not good. And it doesn't seem like anybody's going to be ending this practice of destroying our country by flooding it with people who we can't house or support. But, you know, just another day in the NWO, right? Can we put in more than the maximum? So apparently 2 weeks ago, not that long ago, a week and a half ago, I think last Monday, maybe even just a week ago, I reported that there was a cash crunch at the big bank level, and the smaller banks needed money to pay out the needed cash being churned through the fractional reserve system. And fractional reserve just means that they don't have 100% of your money on hand. Your money's out working in the market, so say, and they've got enough to cover your day-to-day needs. But if you wanted to have all of your money, you'd have to give them a bit of notice, and they'd have to, you know, untie it from the market and all the rest of it, according to the system. But it seems like the investments that underpin this and the value they represent isn't as high or robust as they claim or as the system needs to be secure. And so what's happening is the guys at the top are not wanting to lend, so the Bank of Canada is stepping in to lend. And it was $2 billion not that long ago, and I can't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, and then it was $4 billion, and then it was $8 billion, and now we're at $16 billion, and that's the max. So can we put in more than the max? What happens when your Ponzi scheme needs more money than you've got, or needs more new blood than you can manage? Does it all just collapse? How do you stave that off? How do you kick the can down, right? Because they're going to do whatever they can to kick the can down the road. It seems like they figured out we can run this scheme. We can run it indefinitely if we have control of these controlling circumstances. All we have to do is devalue or bring new people in, and there's always more people, hence invasion, right? Maybe the invasion is fundamentally underpinned by the economic necessity to continue the expansion of the system. And if the system doesn't expand, then it collapses and they lose their power. Could it be that simple? Is that it? Is that why? Possibly. Goodness me. So some protests are more equal than others. We're going to start there. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Unacceptable Canadian Girl says, are we invoking the Emergencies Act and freezing their bank accounts, or do we only reserve that for when Canadian citizens peacefully protest for their freedom in Ottawa? Right. If there's hot tubs and stages with people speaking impassionately about what Canada used to be and what Canada represents and the freedom that is promised to us in our Charter of Rights, that can't stand. But this, of course, is no problem. Zexi Lee needs to hear her Netflix. Honking is an app. Honk is akin to what again? Minister, right? But this is just fine. This bears absolutely no response whatsoever. I hope it's not too loud. Here we go. I mean, I'm trying to watch Netflix here. I don't even know what they're saying, right? Like, Jeepers Creepers. That's fine. No problems, right? Elevated, magnified voices, elevated voices, electronically elevated voices. You're not allowed to have that if you were a Canadian person protesting for Canada, and yet pro-Palestinian protesters can have that. That seems pretty wild and crazy, right? Yesterday, I read a news article talking about how prayer services on busy downtown streets or intersections are not against the law, according to Toronto police. And I perhaps didn't comment enough, but Tom Mazzaro underlines it for us. He says, I have so much to say about the hypocrisy of this situation, but it's pretty self-evident that the Toronto police and the political class in Ontario are terrified of upsetting Muslims, but have absolutely no problem running over other citizens with horses. Right. And that same thing's happening in the United Kingdom. We're going to look at the United Kingdom today as well. But that same thing's happening in the United Kingdom. They are targeting, almost making the point of poking a certain population in the eye while walking on eggshells for everybody else. They're trying to provoke a reaction from a specific population while claiming that that population's response to being invaded is somehow offending the Muslim people or anybody else, and how dare they offend you, right? And we're going to end with a whole little comedy piece on being offended. I thought it was quite funny, but it's unbelievable how easily the rhetoric has turned people to just accept this. I can't. You almost have to explain to people that what is being proposed by the police and by the broader leadership for a response to what people are upset about is to jail them, is to crack down on them, is to call them nutcases, far right, all the rest. That's what's being normalized, and real criminality is being normalized, right? Like walking down the street calling for this banner. Again, I buried the lead. It says, "Long live legal armed resistance to occupation." And apparently in international law, it's recognized that Palestinians are allowed to have legally armed resistance to an occupation. And in Canada, I don't think we believe in that. So can you imagine the truckers walking down the street saying, "Long live legally armed resistance to occupation"? If the truckers started doing that, the police would be beating the tar out of these guys, right? And like police in Australia are following guys down the street, assaulting them because they're walking down the street filming. Like these guys are snatching phones out of these guys' hands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're somebody who's fighting for freedom and against the government's turning a blind eye to the invasion going on, they're going to target you. But if you're saying, "Vive la armed résistance," then they're just fine, doubly fine, because he said it in French. Right. But if you're praying in the middle of the street, we're real sorry that the white people offended you. Right. And I mean, that's an untenable situation to be in. And trying to explain that to somebody, why they should be upset about that, seems arduous. Sudbury police, this is not a joke, this is a real police tweet. They say, "We're requesting assistance to identify a person responsible for mischief to a pride flag painting on Minto Street." And apparently they're treating it as a hate crime. So this is the person they want to find. This is the crime, right? How dare you put paint on a pride crosswalk? How dare you? So they're looking for him, but not anybody in the Vive la Armed Resistance group, right? They're fine. No problem, guys. We're real sorry we got in your way, right? They're marching down the middle of the street. But if you were saying, "Get Justin Trudeau out because he's a communist dictator," they would arrest you, right? So, True North is reporting a former Canadian United Nations official, now an expert on North Korea, has been detained in Switzerland on suspicion of espionage for China. Oh, I'm shocked. I talked about this yesterday, but True North has a bit more color on it and a bit more information, I guess. So here's part of the article. A former Canadian United Nations official, expert in North Korea. The individual, a man in his 50s, was arrested this spring following an investigation that began at least 2 years ago. Swiss authorities, after monitoring his frequent travels to China, where he worked as an environmental consultant, suspected him of conducting political, economic, and military intelligence on behalf of the Chinese government. The investigation, launched by the Swiss Attorney General's office on March 14, 2023, remains ongoing. The case was first reported by German outlet Der Spiegel. Swiss authorities have not released the names of the individual, and no formal charges have been announced. The Swiss Attorney General's office emphasized the importance of maintaining security in espionage investigations. The arrest highlights the growing concern about foreign espionage by high-profile figures on behalf of China. And it's interesting, that this is a former Canadian UN official spying on behalf of China. So it's notable that now China has spies from Canada. You see how that's a notable thing? I think that's a notable thing. That's a pretty crazy. It would be like China having spies from Australia, former Australian blank, right? Former Australian, UN official. That would be a big deal, don't you think? Right? It's a big deal because Canada's spying for China. Pourquoi? Right? Why? Andrew Coyne says NDP calls for an investigation into bot posts about Polyev rally. CTV News is talking. And Ryan says, double standard. There are thousands of pro-Trudeau bots, and don't get me started on the ArriveCan app. The ArriveCan app has more positive reviews than Netflix and a whole bunch of other popular apps like TikTok and whatever it is. A whole bunch of people have been compiling the number of bots used to pile on and give these apps 5-star ratings. Meanwhile, nobody uses these apps. They don't get any, it is not likely that these apps have garnered those reviews legitimately. And so the speculation is the Liberals are paying bot farms to do this and haven't turned them off. There's a lot of money going into this. And so it's rich coming from the Liberals that they want an investigation into this, right? The Liberals and the NDP, because it's the NDP who have started this. NDP MP Charlie Angus has asked the Commissioner of Canada's Elections to probe a number of posts on social media worried they may constitute foreign interference. Angus claims there were hundreds of posts on social media following the rally from all corners of the world. Each of them shared the same message, claiming they were still buzzing from the energy in the room. Now, the other part of this is we have proven 11 candidates, at least 11 candidates, foreign interference. Han Dong used Chinese students from Waterloo, I think, bust in to win the nomination in a safe Liberal seat. And isn't that election interference? Isn't that foreign interference? Charlie Angus is absolutely enraged by the bots that who knows who bought them. But, you know, the foreign interference in the form of Chinese money and Chinese students being bussed around, et cetera, to clinch a safe Liberal seat. Nothing to see here, says Charlie. No problems. We've got nothing to say about that, right? We don't want to bring down the government. We just want the Conservatives to feel the heat on the bots that these guys have been using the whole time to manipulate social media and more. Anyway, back to this. Just got back from Pierre. Oh yeah, this is what the bot says. Quote, just got back from the Pierre Poilievre rally in Kirkland Lake and I'm still buzzing from the energy, wrote a user with the name Alexis, whose account is purportedly from Waikato District, New Zealand. Well, I'm glad. I mean, Poilievre is drawing crowds from everywhere, right? If you're coming from New Zealand, that's a long flight. Hope your arms didn't get tired. Right? Are we going to allow offshore bots and mysterious third-party operatives to try and influence Canadian points of view? And in the lead up to an election, Angus said in an interview with CTV News, or are we going to have integrity in the system? We do not have integrity in the system. Are you kidding me right now, Charlie Angus? Come on, really? I think that it's funny that he's trying to pretend that the current system in its current incarnation has integrity. It does not. There are multiple Chinese candidates, people who used our system and abused loopholes in our system to place their preferred candidates over people that Canadians would maybe prefer. And yet Charlie Angus doesn't care. He doesn't care. He is ideologically he's an ideological pit bull trained that the Conservatives are his target, right? And he's trying to, I don't know, rip their face off or whatever. A spokesperson for the Commissioner of Canada Elections confirmed the organization has received a complaint from Angus, citing confidentiality provisions of the Canada Elections Act. Miriam Crusette said the commissioner can't disclose any details in relation to the issue outlined in the letter. So sorry about that. I can't help you, but you know, yes, we did receive the complaint. So it's rich, and I don't think that the NDP are trying to help us by saving us from the bot farm the Conservatives are spending money on. All of the political parties are purchasing bots. Are purchasing bots. They purchase followers, they purchase likes, they purchase all sorts of stuff because that's what money goes to. I think that we should not have any money go to advertising at all, and all politicians' books should be fully transparent. Absolutely. If you want to log into the bank account and see what the payments were and who they were paying and what the receipt was, the invoice they were paying was, you should be able to do that because they work for you with your dollars. Full stop, period, right? If they're getting $19 orange juice, you should damn well know about it. And then you should be able to hold them accountable and say, what is this? Why are you spending my money like this? Are you kidding me right now? Why not? Why not justify? Because people might get mad? Yeah, they damn well might get mad. Chris Barber is one of the he's one of the supposed leaders of the Freedom Convoy, but the Freedom Convoy kind of ran itself, didn't it? Anyway, Chris and a lot of the other leaders took the Bitcoin and ran. Isn't that weird? Isn't that so weird how that happened? Anyway, Chris Barber says, double standard in Canada. If this were blue-collar Canadians protesting body autonomy, Toronto would have had the horses out to stomp on a few more Canadian civil liberties, right? Otherwise, you're allowed to pray in the middle of the street, right? So they get very stampy when it's people trying to run their business. But if you're trying to completely destroy our society, well, I mean, you guys just carry on, right? And it's racist to stop you. Are you kidding me? Let's talk about the invasion ongoing in Ontario and Canada. And Dr. Mike Moffat says, short thread time, how on earth did the number of low-wage temporary foreign workers nearly triple in 2022? Too long didn't read. The federal government made some massive changes a mere 13 days after the Liberals and the NDP signed the supply and confidence agreement. I'd never seen this graph, and I thought, wow, like that's a pretty substantial increase, right? So positions approved in temporary foreign worker program by stream in thousands, 4-quarter moving average. So there's a lot. So you can see it under 40 up to 2022, and after 2022, it skyrockets to between 80 and 100. And the agricultural workers at the top, it almost matches them. And apparently, like people who work in farms doing piecework and people who are like picking fruit and things like that, that's a different stream. And so it's shocking. We'll continue on with the thread here. He says the low wage stream allows Canadian employers to hire temporary foreign workers for jobs that pay less than the provincial median wage. Now that this doesn't include agricultural workers, that's a separate program. In Manitoba, that's $25 an hour. On April 4th, 2022, less than 2 weeks after the Liberal NDPs signed their agreement, the federal government massively deregulated the temporary foreign worker program to address current job vacancies across many sectors and occupations. One impactful change was weakening the rule that an employer could only have 10% of their workforce be temporary foreign workers. That got raised to 20%, and in some industries like accommodation and fast food services, that got raised to 30%. There had also been a rule that for some occupations, a temporary foreign worker could not be brought in if the unemployment rate was 6% or higher. That rule was waived, making employers in some high unemployment regions now eligible. This was a deliberate move by the federal government to suppress wage growth for low-income Canadians and increase the number of temporary workers who have much weaker labor rights than permanent residents. And I cannot stress this enough, this attack on labor rights has happened a mere 13 days after the Liberal NDPs signed their confidence and supply agreement, which give the federal NDP more power than they've ever had in my lifetime, and I'm nearly 50. We should note that how destructive this program is for the temporary foreign workers themselves. The UN has criticized Canada. Agricultural and low-wage streams of the temporary foreign workers program constitute a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. So there you go. I consider myself on the progressive side of the Canadian political spectrum, and I think we need to acknowledge that they've completely lost the plot on the temporary foreign workers issue. They've lost the progressive side. I don't know how you can go through COVID and go through the progressives trying to normalize sex change for children and mutilation of healthy sex organs to transition children. We're talking about creating eunuchs from children. Like, this is absolutely bonkers. They've lost the plot on more than the temporary foreign workers, for crying out loud. If you still identify as progressive, I have serious questions about your mental stability, Dr. Moffat. Holy smoke, dude. Progressive? They're lunatics. They're absolute lunatics. If you think that anything that they've sold, do you understand why they wanted women in the workforce? They wanted to steal women's productivity in the form of taxes. That progressive? You're not helping, man. Ugh, what an idiot. Oh my gosh. Anyway, and I would think that I would need to acknowledge that we've completely lost the plot on the temporary. One side, or our side, did this and needs to undo it. Refusing to talk about the problem doesn't help. Your side is communists, you moron. One thing I should add is that Cara Stern, yeah, and I recorded an episode of The Missing Middle on Canada's addiction to temporary foreign workers. I have to admit, Cara figured out what was going on here faster than I did. She was right, I was wrong. If you like these threads, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think progressive people are idiots, because look at what's happened and you still bang the drum. Otherwise, like... Mark Emery says, the West is being invaded by dark-skinned men in a deliberate wave of subversion under the guise of migration. These invaders are coordinated by all these globalist governments, the United Nations, the European Union, the Marxist left, that seeks to destroy custom, tradition, culture, race. This is in Ireland, and he says, how can anybody look at this and not instantly feel like something is very wrong? And you see a bus turn up.
The buses seem to be very packed now. Yesterday evening there we witnessed the bus, and it was full capacity. There was a lot of school kids coming home, and I think it seemed like a lot of the school kids were actually standing on the bus, and the migrants were actually upstairs in the bus, and they came down when they got off, and then the kids proceeded to go back up to the seats that they had left. You know, so the buses are packed. It's definitely impacting on public transport now. The buses seem to be very packed now.
It's not the infrastructure is not built to handle the number of people coming in. You can't serve the number of people coming in. Why would a government that is built to serve the citizens from their tax dollars, to protect the citizens from an invasion, to protect the citizens from an economic disaster, to protect the citizens from everything. They're supposed to govern the country, right? It would be like you taking over your household from like your parents who governed it okay. You governed your household. They paid the bills, the electricity worked, the internet worked, the phone worked. There was food in the fridge, et cetera, et cetera. And then you taking over and then just like not doing any of that and then claiming that it's some foreign person, like, oh, it's the neighbors who made the fridge empty. Well, isn't it you who's supposed to go grocery shopping? Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it's the neighbor's fault that it's not there. Like it doesn't wash, it doesn't fit. And yet we're accepting that excuse from the people who are flooding our country, who are supposed to be acting on our behalf. Oh, it's somebody else's fault. I mean, these economic issues are very global. They're very global. It's somebody else's fault. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. Bull. I don't agree. I don't believe them. They're incorrect. What they're trying to do is disrupt and destabilize our society. Cat Canada says, Canada is basically now a country of foreign feuds. We were thoroughly assured that that diversity is a strength. I fail to see how this doesn't look like strength to me. Diversity, I saw a tweet yesterday, a write-up that talked about basically diversity is the strength of the globalists. It's not our strength, it's their strength. Do you understand? So the diversity is our strength. It's just like the build back better. They're not going to build back better. They're going to destroy everything. The diversity is our strength. It's not our strength. It's the globalist strength. And that diversity destroys our country and all countries that they introduce it to. And here's Brampton, Ontario with a slap fight. And that's pretty crazy. Right? Like, that's pretty... It actually looks like more than a slap fight. They're throwing rocks at each other. There's firecrackers going off. Yesterday, I saw a whole bunch of different footage, and it all kind of looked the same. Like it all looked like this. And there was a slap fight in an Indian village. There was a slap fight in a Canadian one. I guess this isn't the slap fight. I apologize. I thought this was the slap fight, but this is fireworks and people throwing rocks. Maybe the slap fight happens later, but I couldn't believe it, and I didn't know where it was. There were, like, again, 3 or 4 different videos that I saw, and I couldn't tell if it was in Canada, like maybe, out in BC or somewhere in Toronto that I don't recognize, but I couldn't tell where it was. And it's so incredible to have, Indian politics play a big role in Canada right now, because, historically that didn't used to happen, right? And now it's a big role. And I feel like the Khalistani politics, that is a similar thing to the pro-Palestine disruptive wedge issue that is plaguing Toronto. Is it not as bad out west? Perhaps it's not as bad out west and they need another wedge. It's just like black people are a bigger number of the population in the United States, so they can wedge in the United States with Black Lives Matter and things like that. And that worked to a degree in Canada, but they needed to come up with a whole new phrase because they couldn't use black people, and hence BIPOC was born, right? Because they had to say, hey, we noticed that your skin color is different, but like it's not black, so it's different. And so that's the whole, they pander to this subgroup in order to identify the two distinct groups and then pit them against each other, right? And it's, if your job is to destroy society, great work. It's working a treat, right? Michelle says, a young student, quote, there aren't any jobs in Antigonish. I don't know where that is, I'm sorry, for university or high school kids, since most places have immigrants working these jobs that were traditionally held by university and high school kids. Stressing to figure out how I can work to pay for my education. YouTube channel? Start delivering value to direct to customer, right? Alex Hermosi will help you with that. Honestly, it's free. You might as well listen, right? Maxime Bernier is weighing in on this as well. He says, just shut the door to newcomers, and young Canadians won't be struggling to find a job. Labor market stalls as newcomers struggle to find work. Why do we keep importing them? Oh, because the Liberals changed all the rules and allowed people in high unemployment areas to access temporary foreign workers. Yay, right? So it's akin to modern slavery. Let's keep importing them because reasons, right? That's what's going on. The government is not working on our behalf. And they're trying to say, no, it's the neighbor's fault. It's not our fault. It's their fault. I don't believe them because they're liars. Let's talk about economics a little bit. Money. Table Salt says the Bank of Canada is injecting $16 billion, the max amount permitted every day, to try and hammer down the interest rate to 4.5 to the target 4.5%. So they're flooding the market with money in order to make it cheaper to borrow money. And Fun Guy says, last month, CIBC complained about distortions in short-term funding markets and certain banks hoarding cash, and the Bank of Canada responded with these injections. So why would banks be hoarding cash? Banks are hoarding cash, I think, because their investments aren't as valuable as they say they are, and they need the cash to pay out the people who demand their money back. Maybe. I could be wrong. Here's Bloomberg, and it says, CIBC says Bank of Canada must end or fix quantitative tightening, distortions in short-term markets inflating effective rates. Banks are hoarding settlement balances, analysts say. And so this is July 17th. I remember reporting on it, and this is Bloomberg, and the article's paywalled now, I guess. But this has been happening for a while. They started with $1 billion injections, and now they're up to the max. And it didn't take very long, right? So, like, did they think they were going to get to Christmas with this plan? What's the strategy next, right? We've had first breakfast. It was delicious. Can we have another, right? Like, when's second breakfast? Pierre Poilievre says it's time to put an end to creating a central bank digital currency in Canada. MP Ted Falk's Bill C-400 will ban central bank digital currency, protect cash use, ensure businesses accept cash, and maintain cash infrastructure. Less government control equals more freedom and privacy for Canadians. So maintaining cash, so says Pierre Poilievre, is a cornerstone important thing for his administration. And that sounds like good news. Where's the trick? Right? Maintaining cash is good. My opinion, I think that what he's going to do is and until I saw this, what I thought he was going to do, because this says clearly he's going to ban central bank digital currency. Previously, I heard that he was going to ban mandatory digital IDs. And I don't know what he said about central bank digital currency, but it was my impression that he was going to allow a central bank digital currency to operate alongside the Canadian dollar, and not mandate it. Similar to the digital ID, it can operate. You can have it if you want to. If it's convenient, you can use it, but we won't mandate it. We're not going to use that. But the second you do that, then you've lost. We've lost. You're in the trap now. And then they can just say it's mandated, right? COVID's real bad. It's mandated. Done. Oh, you're a grandma killer, you racist, right? Like, same thing. It's exactly the same thing. If you don't do it, you're no longer allowed to use your central bank digital currency, right? That would be a tool in their toolbox that they would use, right? And yes, I'm using air quotes because that's the language they use directly. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful